My name is Benton Stokes. I'm a former fundamentalist, post-evangelical worship leader, and songwriter. I enjoy wry Manhattans, roller coasters, and road trips, just not all at the same time.
I'm Elane O'Rourke, and I'm a teacher, an author, and a spiritual coach. I was a philosophy professor and a liberal pastor in a couple of former lives, and these days, I love aha moments and not-so-dry martinis.
We have conversations about life and God with a queer perspective, over cocktails, like you. This is Cocktail Theology.
So I don't usually talk about the weather on the podcast. However, it's really stinking hot.
It is hot.
We are in San Jose, California as we speak on July the 4th.
Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day. So I made a really cold drink.
Thank you.
So today's drink was invented by the author Ian Fleming for James Bond.
Dun, dun, dun. No, that's Mission Impossible. Never mind, I can't do any James Bond themes.
So this was in the book Casino Royale, which was published in the 50s. And it's called the Vesper, and it's named for both his foe and his love interest. Her name was Vesper Lind.
Okay, can we just lift that up and hold it for a moment and say both his foe and his love interest? Mm-hmm. We may need to do an episode just on that.
Just on that, right?
Yeah.
So this is a Vesper, so it is a type of martini.
Okay. Oh, darn.
It's really good. It's 3 parts gin, 1 part vodka, 1/2 part Lillet Blanc. And it gets a lemon twist. I also added a little bit of lemon zest just to brighten it up a little.
Well, that's really good. What gin did you use?
Citadel.
Okay.
Which is a French gin that we happen to have in our bar.
We happen to have it.
I think it's the first time I've ever had it, but
Very
it's really
nice.
good.
Yeah.
It's dry. It's on the dry side.
It's very dry. You could actually add more Lillet, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. Mm-hmm. The recipe called for 3 parts gin, 1 part vodka, and 1/2 part Lillet Blanc.
I can see why, but I would probably bump it just a shade because it's treating it like vermouth. Like essentially, it's a 4-to-1, right?
Right.
Or actually 4-to-1/2. 8-to-1.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little dry, even pour moi.
For you, it's really dry,
but it's very tasty.
Mm-hmm. And most importantly, it's cold.
It is cold.
Today on this Independence Day, we're talking about voting and why it is so bleeping important.
And I just want you all to know that the bleeping word is his.
Yeah, and I did use bleeping and not the word that I wanted to use.
And we appreciate it because then we'd have to put a warning on it, and you couldn't let your kid. It would be not safe for work, etc.
We are in a season right now in the United States where if you're paying any attention at all, it is absolutely imperative that as American citizens, we allow our voices to be heard. The way to do that is by voting. It's at the polls. We could get into all of the current events that are making this such a consequential election. But the fact is, even if we weren't facing some of the things that we're facing, voting is still incredibly important. Voting rights are something that should be held with a great deal of respect for ourselves and for others. And they should be recognized as the backbone of what makes our republic work.
Yes.
Should be.
Should be. And I know that people are disenchanted with voting because it feels as though it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I think in my lifetime anyway, there's really only been one other election where voting mattered as much as this one.
Yeah, which one?
The other one like this.
Yeah.
Because the ideological choices are so clear.
Yes.
No matter how you feel about the people, the ideological choices are very, very clear. And they point to a different vision for what it means to be this republic.
Yes.
That's setting aside all of the incidents and concerns that we have about either candidate. Mm-hmm. Now, I have very strong opinions about who you should vote for. Mm-hmm. I have even stronger opinions about who you shouldn't vote for.
Yes, same.
And it's, from my perspective, if you are saying, it doesn't matter if I vote, what you're saying is, my name is Pontius Pilate, And I want to be able to wash my hands of the outcome.
Yeah.
Because this is so clearly two different people, whether or not you like either of them.
Right.
Two different people with two different, very basic senses of what it means to be a commonwealth, a republic, a group of people together. Mm-hmm. To say that neither one matters is disingenuous.
And it's frustrating.
Yes.
For those of us that recognize how much this election matters when people say, well, I just won't vote.
Right. And honestly, for those of us whose ancestors had to fight for the vote.
Yes.
So as a woman, my peeps got the vote. Some of my peeps got the vote in the early part of the 20th century. Now, not all my peeps did.
It's true.
Because the whole thing started out where the only people who could vote were landowners, and the only landowners were white. So that narrowed it down right there to how many people could vote. So basically you had white, male peoples deciding everything. Mm-hmm. So then slowly there was a fight for voting rights across the board. Mm-hmm. And then white women were granted the vote. And I'm being very careful to say here white women, because even though universal suffrage, that's in a big scare quotes right now, people, universal suffrage was passed, universal actually still didn't include black women.
Right.
So it continued to be an issue until the Voting Rights Acts much later, which at least said in theory that all citizens of this nation should be given the right to vote with extraordinary circumstances under which they might not be able to vote. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in some states, convicted felons cannot vote on the federal election.
Right.
But by and large, the idea is if you are a citizen, you cannot be denied the vote. But that took a whole heck of a lot of protesting and bloodshed and all kinds of stuff to make that happen.
Right. And we still have states that don't want to actually abide by that. They try to find loopholes to exclude groups of people from having their votes counted.
Of course. So voting is not only a right, unfortunately, it's also a privilege. Mm-hmm. And I always encourage people to think about who they are throwing under the bus when they choose not to exercise that right.
Right.
Because it isn't just about what I think. It's about how this will affect the least of these. And as someone who claims to follow Jesus, at least moderately, how it affects the least of these is extremely important to me.
And that was the thing, the big thing that I wanted to talk about was why, as progressive Christians, it's so important to vote in this election especially. Mm-hmm. And it's that very thing. If we profess to follow Jesus, and that means paying attention to what he said, paying attention to what he did, emulating his faith and his behaviors and his practices, and building those into our lives as if they matter, and understanding that our lives matter and that we have the opportunity to help so many other people by just living out our lives the way that Jesus taught us to. If we take that seriously, then voting is a very important part of that.
That's
because,
right.
Again, what you're saying, we have the opportunity to vote for the candidate or the platform or whatever that best helps the least of these.
That's right.
We can use our rights as voting citizens to help others.
That's right. That's right. It's a little bit like the Roman centurions who actually did some good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because those of us who have the power to vote and who have more voice can use those things to help other people.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you didn't talk about country in this, because I just need to tell everybody right now, in case it isn't clear, I'm not a patriot. And the reason I'm not a patriot is because countries are abstract ideas supported by things like maps and laws.
Yeah.
If you took away the maps and you took away the laws, really we all kind of flow into one another. Now, we may flow into one another poorly because of cultural differences and such, but I guarantee that a border does not make cultural differences.
Right. That's true.
Okay? So for me, it is less about voting because it's good for your country than it is that your country represents a whole bunch of people
Yes.
who are affected by the outcome.
Yes.
Some of whom are less affected than others. Rich folks, for example, are always less affected by things than others are, unless it has to do with keeping them from having to pay income tax. And more people are affected than others. But it's not about country. It's about whether you care about anybody but your own damn self.
Right, exactly.
I may have feelings about this.
It's very important to vote, and not just to vote, but to have conversations, to let the people closest to you know exactly how you feel about the candidates, about the platforms, about the ideas that are being promoted or discouraged. And especially if you have kids, especially if you have teenagers that may not be voting in this election but will be in the next. It's just really important to show them how important it is to you to vote. Every time that I've gone to vote in Tennessee, I've seen parents with young kids taking them into the booth and showing them the process. And I just think that's so awesome and important to do that.
Yeah.
So talking about voting in our homes and making sure that people understand, our kids understand, our loved ones understand where we are on these issues and why we vote.
Right.
I think it's super important.
Right.
And in this election, it just feels more consequential than ever because this election could be won or lost based on voter turnout.
I mean, the thing that most of us are concerned about, and I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on, you're concerned about the vote being stolen.
Yes.
Okay? Now, whether it's a legitimate concern or not, that is our concern. The only way to make it possible for the vote to not be stolen is to show up in such masses that they are undeniable.
Undeniable, right.
That's the first piece of this. The second piece of this, to me, period, to everyone, darn it, to everyone, is that it isn't just about the person who's occupying the office. It's about the things they can set in motion that play out over years and years and years.
That's what we're contending with right now.
And that's what we're contending with right now. So right now we are seeing our Supreme Court, which is appointed for life, making decisions that directly contradict the intent of the Constitution.
Yes.
And I'm not fiddling with words here. The intent of the Constitution was to create someone who was not a king and a group of legislators and some people who could kind of oversee just the law part to make sure the law was being maintained according to the Constitution.
Right.
That's what they were trying to set up.
Yep.
And our current Supreme Court, as a group, care not one whit about this. What is being set into motion by the decisions they are making now will affect, unless they get changed, will affect generations of people to come.
Yes.
The person in that office chooses those people. Those people make or break our legal system.
Yeah, they do.
So there's that first piece. Yes, I may be up on a soapbox. I'm going to build it a little bit higher right now. The other piece of this is that although the person in office cannot affect the price of gas, wake up people, and cannot affect how much your property is worth, hello.
Right.
What they can do is push money to go in particular directions, to push influence to go in particular directions. And the question is whether the person there cares about, again, the least of these, but cares about anyone at all.
Anybody at all, right.
Paying attention to who those people pander to, and I mean that quite deliberately, tells you something about who they are.
Yes, it does.
And if you are pushing for people to say that you are above the law, then you are saying, I am the most important person in the world. I am honestly above God because God believes in law. And if you think that's okay, then you have not read your Bible.
Right. Yeah, and we'll have to do a whole episode on kings at some point, just to because there's a lot. Breathing. There's a lot that God feels about kings,
Right.
and a lot of hard lessons that the Jewish people learned about kings.
Exactly. Now, I do also want to say, separate from the whole voting piece, is if you want to have important influence, the best way to do that is locally and directly.
Yes.
Okay, the Green Party's absolutely right about this. Where you have the most power is right in front of you. That means that if you have people you can support in your area, you are doing them more good than if you don't support them.
Yes.
You have more power in your local elections than you do in your federal election.
Yes.
All of those things are true. That doesn't mean that you should ignore the bigger pictures.
Right.
But if you're the kind of person who really likes to get hands-on, first of all, you can get hands-on in an election. You can work the election. You can work for the election and make sure that voting goes the way it should. Mm-hmm. You can help maintain the sanctity of the election. Mm-hmm. There are lots of things you can do to make sure you can get people to the polls.
Right.
There's a lot you can do to make this happen.
Yes.
That says nothing about your political views.
Right.
Says only about whether you care about whether people who have fought for the opportunity to exercise this particular right are able to do so.
Right.
Unencumbered.
Right. Yeah, those people are important. Those volunteers are incredibly important.
They're hugely important. The other thing I'm going to say is look at who somebody surrounds themselves with. Look at the people that the candidate chooses for advisors. Mm-hmm. Not whether you like them or not, but whether they seem to be trying to do the right thing or not. Just look at that.
Yeah.
Because no president, in this case, makes decisions, if they have any brain at all, makes any decisions all by themselves. Now, some try, but the idea is that they surround themselves with really smart people.
Right.
Who are really paying attention.
Yes.
And who care about you.
Yes.
You, personally. And the person in the worst condition in your town, city, state, whatever.
Right.
Look at the people surrounding the person.
Yeah.
If you have any possible concern that they may not intellectually, I'm not talking about in their hearts, intellectually care about people like you and take action, if they will not will the good for you and yours truly, you might want to reconsider their candidate.
Yes.
Now, that may mean that you come down to having to vote for one of two not great outcomes.
Right.
That happens.
Yep.
That happens. I can think of one particular race when I was a very small child where my mother said at that point that she was just going in, holding her nose and voting.
Yeah.
But for her, it was so clear what the potential outcomes were of voting for the other person that she knew she had to vote for the one she voted for. I felt that way about voting for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
I do not love Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
At all. Did not love what was happening on the opposite side.
Right. So you do what you have to do.
That's right. And I do, personally, I think the choice is clear here, even if I don't love the choice I'm being given.
Yes, I completely agree.
But more importantly, I urge every single person here to get out and vote for the person who, at least verbally, doesn't set themselves above God.
Yeah, that's kind of important.
It's kind of it.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, listeners. Hope this gives you guys something to think about. I'm sure that you're already thinking about it. You guys are smart folks, and I know that you're paying attention. But it is just more imperative than ever that we do that and encourage those we love to do the same. So.
And if you're not in the United States and are therefore listening to this out of prurient curiosity rather than actually any ability to influence the outcome, we would appreciate your prayers and support.
Yes, we would.
Because not only do we appreciate it always, but unfortunately, as goes the United States, goes most of the world.
It's true.
I feel so much like a Roman centurion today. Viva Rome.
Viva Rome. Thanks for listening, folks.
Bye.
Funny how the view can change, how life just seems to rearrange itself. No matter what it was, I don't know how it goes, but look, moving on feels pretty good. Moving on
you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and hit subscribe wherever you're listening right now. We welcome your comments, questions, and ideas for conversations and for cocktails. Please get in touch with us at our website, cocktailtheology.com. Cocktail Theology is a production of SFS. Our theme song is Moving On Feels Pretty Good, recorded by yours truly, Benton Stokes. You can find my music wherever you stream your favorite artists. Join us next Thursday for another new episode.